Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite tools that is on the DSA, although it is not paid for by our district. There is a pretty robust free version that I think you can get a lot out of, especially if you are using this tool as a teaching tool where you are creating content driven presentations for your students to learn from. And I also think, even with the free version, that you can get a lot out of it if you are using it as an in product or project that the kids actually are using it to create something. So, Book Creator, in a nutshell, is a tool that allows either teachers or students to create ebooks. It makes sense. But it's so much more than that. So, just, at its very most threadbare version is thinking of it as an ebook creator. But really, if you dig deep, it can be such a great tool for creation in the classroom. Okay, so today we will cover creating a book creator account. If you've never done that before, we're going to start there. We're going to talk about how to easily add students to your teacher library. We're going to talk about the basic tools that you can use in Book Creator as students are creating ebooks, or as maybe you as the teacher are creating an ebook to share with students. I'm going to give you a quick kind of hack with Book Creator as far as taking PowerPoint presentations and or Google Slides and turning them easily into ebooks. So if you want to use Book Creator as opposed to one of those presentation tools, especially with e-learning and virtual learning as a teaching tool, it's an easy thing to do. And then finally, we're going to dig down into ideas for implementation, and we'll talk about kind of expanding on the idea of using Book Creator for projects, project-based learning, and also, of course, as we're looking forward to block scheduling, how you can use Book Creator weekly or daily in your classroom as something that students are building on each day of the school year. Okay, so that is what we will cover today. So first today, we're going to talk about creating a Book Creator account if you have never done so in the past. The very first thing that I will recommend is that you are going to use the single sign-on with Google and use your normal GCSD username and password. That just makes life easier, and it's one less password for you to remember. So here I am at bookcreator.com, and the very first step, of course, is to click on Sign In. It's very important when you get to this point in the step that you realize that there are two different options. There's a student sign in and a teacher sign in. So your students will come to the exact same spot, app.bookcreator.com, and they will choose the student sign in. They will do the single sign on with Google using their @greenvilleschools.us account. And you may do the same thing, but it's just really important that you as a teacher click on that teacher sign in. Your student will sign in with a code that you will give them to join your library. You will sign in again with Google. So just like pretty much all other things, you'll have to select your account. You will have to accept certain things that it asks you to accept, and then you will have your account all set up. So you can see right here in the upper right-hand corner, you can see my image there. And if I click on that, it tells me a little bit about my account. I have the 40 book plan. That is the free version. It gives you 40 books that you can have your students create. So when it's talking about a 40 book plan, that means at any point in time, you can have up to 40 books in your library. So I know for some of us, if we're thinking, well, I'd like to do a book creator project with all 5 of my classes, which is 130 students, that doesn't work. And yes, I agree with that. However, if you really think deep and you're creative here, 40 is a viable option, especially if you're doing it with one section. Maybe you have one class with 25 kids and you want to try it out there. The very first step I would take as a teacher, and I'm going to bring you over here to the other side to this little hamburger menu here, is to first try using Book Creator as a teaching tool as opposed, so teacher directed as opposed to student directed, just to kind of get your feet wet. Ultimately, we want students to be doing the creation. We want them to take control. But again, my suggestion, just to get your feet wet, especially if you've never used Book Creator before, is to, again, to start here in the teacher dashboard under My Books. You technically have two libraries. My Books is really just a private library where you can create ebooks yourself as a teacher. You can share them out with students with a link, but this is not a library that you can share with your students for them to create their own books. You will have a library that you create, and you'll see here it says create a new library. When you click on that button, it will prompt you to name your library. Now, right here, when I click, notice it says the free plan only allows one active library. You could archive your current library to make space for a new one or upgrade your plan for more libraries and books. Okay, so what does that mean? I have already created a library. Notice I named it Media Center. Since I'm using the free version, where I only have 40 books at a time, I would suggest you name it something very general, like Miss Mullen 2020, or science or math. For me, I named mine Media Center because I'm going to be using this with all students, not just a specific class. If you decide at a later time that this is something, again, after you kind of get your feet wet and use it, that you would like to pay for, there are pretty reasonable plans that you can pay for with your 275. And again, it's a perfect time right now to really experiment with it and think about it for the upcoming school year, especially when we are on the block schedule. Okay, so I just want to go ahead and mention that while I'm here. We see again under My Libraries, we have My Books, which are private, and Media Center, which you can see I've already created 3 of my 40 books. Okay, so let's talk about if you enjoy this and you want to pay for it at a later point. How do you do that? Essentially, you click on your account options in the upper right hand corner and click on Upgrade Plan. Okay, so I just want to quickly talk about this before we get our feet wet with all the tools. If you would like to, for $60 a year, there is a plan where you can have 3 different libraries, and each library can store up to 60 books at a time, which really that is a large number of books at any one point in time. So really 180 students, hopefully that would be more than your maximum. So each student could create a book that they could add to throughout the year. We'll talk a little bit later about maybe creating Book Creator books as a journal, a digital journal that they keep all year, or a digital portfolio. So that may be something that you're interested in. If you wanted to carve out $120 out of your 275, and I know that's quite a large chunk, then really you have almost unlimited access. They can create up to 1,000 books at a time. You can create unlimited numbers of libraries, so you could have a library for every single unit if you wanted to. You could have a library for every single week if you wanted to get that detailed. And each library can store up to 200 books, and you can have 1,000 books at a time. So I think the $60 per teacher per year is a fairly reasonable thing if you really get into this and decide that it is something that you would like to expand into. Okay, so let's go back now to the landing page, my teacher account, and let's start now and talk. Now that we've created our Book Creator account, let's talk about how do we share this with our students. Okay, so if you want to add students to your teacher library, again, remember I have my one private library where I can create ebooks all by myself that I can share out with students, almost like Google slide presentations or PowerPoint presentations. I could share an ebook to help them learn about a certain part of my content area or for a certain unit or lesson. And I also have a library that I created called Media Center. So how would I share that library with my students so that they can begin creating their own ebooks? Let's take a look at that really quickly. Okay, so here I am again in my teacher dashboard, and I'm going to go into the Media Center library, which is the one that I can share with students. So let's say that I'm starting on a project and I am ready for students to join my library. You can see right here, and again, I'm going to back up just a little bit, that when I clicked on Media Center, up at the top, it says show the invite code for others to join. When I click on that, I have this code right here, and the instructions say to share this code with other students and teachers, and they'll be able to create books in the library and read each other's books. Notice the warning to keep it safe and don't share it on social media. Once students create books in Book Creator, they can publish it with a URL. The great thing is, though, if you keep this code secret, it is in confidential. Once they have published that book, it's kind of like when you publish a Google Doc and you have it set to only people with the link can find it. That is how their books are published. So really, you're not sharing that book or that information with the entire world, just with anyone who is inside your library. So fellow students in the classroom, if you have co-teachers and you've given this code, they will be able to see it, but just people with the links to those books. So that's a great thing. And of course, this is important as well. Want to stop users from joining, you can expire this code, and essentially the library code has been disabled, and you can generate a new code. You just click on invite again. It's kind of like creating a new Google Meet link, and now you can see I have a totally new code. Okay, so a great thing to know there about students joining your library. Okay, so now what we want to talk about is, what does that look like from the student's end of the spectrum? Okay, so I have signed out now, and I'm going in as a student at the student sign in. So I'm going to sign in with Google. And again, the student will choose their account to sign in with. Okay. Once the student has signed in with their Google account, they will be prompted to join a library. They really cannot sign up for Book Creator without joining a library. So it is directly connected to a teacher's account. Okay, so I have now copied and pasted. Remember, again, I'm signed in as a student, that join code from the Media Center library. And once I have entered that code as a student, and you as the teacher again would copy that invite code and distribute it to the student either via Google Classroom, via email, via Google Doc, however you would want to distribute that to your students. Once I press go, then I can see the books that are already in this library. So these are books that are already in the Media Center library. And it says mine and the teachers. And if I, as the student, now want to create a new book, I just click on this plus sign and I begin a new book. Okay, so it's as simple as that. Now, I want to quickly go back over to the teacher view to show you some controls that you have as a teacher. For example, I'm signed in as my son right now as Jack Mullen. And you may not want your student, for example, if Jack was your student, to be able to see all these other books. Maybe you want the student to only be able to see their book as they're creating it, and then later on they can see their classmates' books. So let's talk about how to set those things up. So again, I'm back here on the teacher end of the spectrum in the Media Center library. And what I want to tell you about are the library settings. So this is where you have control as a teacher. Notice right here, you can click on the name of the library, and you could change that at any point in time during the school year if you wanted to change the name of your library. I would suggest leaving this on. That allows students to do a Google image search. This button allows students to edit their own books along the way, and of course you want to leave that on. Just a warning about the Google image search. Most of the images that they find to build their ebook will be allowed, but there are a few, because of copyright settings that they will not be able to insert, and it just gives them a warning if it is one that is not allowable. Now, this is what I was talking about before. Students can read each other's books. You can toggle this on and off. So for me, if I'm having students work on a project where they're creating ebooks about their content knowledge, I might have this turned off at first, where they're creating, and then maybe when the project is finished, then I toggle that back on and allow them to read each other's books. So you do have the power as the teacher under your settings to do that. And also, students can publish their books online. If you do not allow them to do this, then it's not going to allow them to create a URL that that makes their book shareable, whether it's through Classroom or shareable with other teachers, etc. So again, that is up to you. You do have the option to archive a library, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. And that ties into that 40 book limit. So you can actually archive your library. You could archive it. Let's say it's a project. You archive this library, and then you can create a whole new library with 40 more books if you would like to throughout the process. Finally, publish library online. If you wanted to publish all of the books in the library at one time to share it out with others, you can do that as well. So again, those are the library settings, and that's right here under this settings cog within whatever library it is that you have created in Book Creator. Let's now talk about Book Creator tools and basics. So I'm going to run through quickly all of the tools that are available to you as a teacher, and also all of the tools that will be available to your students as they are creating Book Creator books for your class. Here I am on the Media Center landing page for the Media Center Library. And again, yours might be called something totally different, like Mr. Smith's First Period or Science or PE. So whether I am a teacher or a student, this is where books can be created. So you as a teacher could create books in this library that students could see, or again, you could share using the invite code. You could share this library with your students where they can join and start creating books for an assignment. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the new book option right here. And notice you have some different shapes, and you actually have different books that include comic book options. We'll talk about that in just a second, but first I'm just going to choose a square ebook to create. And you will see that it immediately goes to the cover page. Now, going back to my books, you can now see that there are, okay, sorry, I had to let that catch up there and refresh. Now you can see that there are 3 books in this library as opposed to 2 because I've added a new book. Okay, so looking in this view right here, where you're looking at all the different books in the library, you can take a look at it close up, or you can toggle into grid mode where you can see them a little bit more off in a far off view. Now, if you had 40 books in your library, you can imagine that this view would be very, very useful. So you could preview all those books that your students had created. But since I only have 3, that's not really necessary. I also want to show you, before I go into actually editing the book with this little pencil icon right here, these 3 settings down at the bottom that you will see for any book that is in the library, whether it is one you created or one that a student has created. So first of all, the book options allows you to do a couple of things. You could import a book if you had a book in EPUB format, which is a little complicated. You probably will seldom use this, but you could actually import a book. You could move a book if you have multiple libraries. So if you had the paid version where you are allowed multiple libraries, or you can move this book into My Books, your private library, if you would like to, okay? And then finally, you can actually copy a book. So let's say, for example, that you have created a template. You could have a template in your library, and then the students themselves could go in and have the option to make a copy of that book with all the elements in it and make it their own. And then finally, this is an interesting option. You can combine books. So let's say that we're at the end of a project and that we have, instead of just these 3 books that we can see on the screen, let's say that we had 10 books in there, okay? Lots of different books. What you could do with that combined books option is you could click on that and notice it shows all the books in my library. You could select these different books and combine them, okay? And what it will allow you to do next is give it a title, and you would actually create a new book with all of the different pages from those books. So what you could do is basically take maybe 5 or 6 of the best projects, combine them into one book. So that only takes up one book out of your 40 book library to save for later as an exemplar or an example for the next year. So that's kind of an interesting thing that you can do, is combine books in your library. The share option is where you are allowed to publish your book online. If you do that, you will give the book a title, okay, and you will actually I'm going to go ahead and give it a title because it won't let me go past that. You will click on Publish Book. And once you have done that, you will be able to read it online. Now, you can stop publishing, so take it down, or you could copy this public share link to a clipboard, okay? And if you go into a new tab and paste that URL, you will see that now your book appears in a true ebook format, okay? And I hadn't added anything at all to that book, so you will see there's not much there, okay? All right, so that is the share option. And again, your students will not be able to publish their books unless you have set that up in your settings right here, that they can publish their books online, okay? Finally, the play button allows you to take a certain book and preview it. So if you're in the middle of editing it, but you want to see what it will look like as you actually play this book, you can do that very easily as you are creating your books, okay? Going back to my books, and now what I'm going to do is click on the sample book and begin to show you all the different options that students have. So there are 2 main symbols that you need to acquaint your students with: add an item and then the inspector. Add an item is very similar to where you're adding elements, for example, on your Google Sites as a teacher, where you're adding text boxes and images and embedding links, that sort of thing. That is what this plus sign is kind of equivalent to. So you can see we have media and shapes. I'll actually start with shapes because it's very simple. So we have some very simplified things, such as, for example, this little rounded square here. But you can imagine that these could serve as all different things. Even though they're very simplified, these could be buttons, these could be different sections of text that students are presenting. And so again, that's under the plus sign under shapes, and there's lots of different options right there, okay? And I'm just going to go ahead and delete that out. And now let's talk about media. That's a little bit more complicated section. So some things that you can add media-wise. You can import. And by importing, you're importing things such as images, files, etc. And again, you'll see that this is somewhat similar to what you recall when you were building your Google site. So there's a simple Google image search. So let's say that I need maybe like a clip art of a boy. I'm doing some storytelling here. So I can find any sort of image or clip art here and insert that. Okay, once you insert that image, you will have these different bars that you can increase or decrease the size. You can tilt your image. If you have several images, you can actually order those. So if you look here under the inspector, which we'll talk about in just a moment, you can move that to the back or to the front. Okay, so some simple things that you can do with images. Okay, all right, again, under import, another really neat thing is maps. Let's say, for example, that you are studying an author and his journey from maybe his homeland to different countries. You could certainly import a map there. Or maybe you're even studying different regions throughout the world and different ecosystems. So, for example, let's say that we are studying the ecosystem in Pakistan. Okay, you could certainly insert that Google Map image. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to select it, and you can see that it will grab that Google Map image and insert it into your ebook. Now, that's probably not the best example, but a really cool option for sure if you have any sort of a geographical element in your project. Okay, so the next thing we're going to take a look at, still under the import option, there's lots of different options here, is files. So if your students are working on their Chromebooks, under files, that's actually going to pull from their local files. For you as a teacher, it's going to pull from your network folders. So you can add things there from your network folders. But if you are a student, again, that's going to pull from their local files there on their Chromebook. They also can add elements from Drive. It will prompt students to be allowed to connect to their Drive. They are allowed to do that. So you would have to go ahead and, again, sign in as you did at the first sign-in screen. But once you have done that and you have connected your account with Book Creator, it will allow you to pull elements from your Google Drive. So maybe there are images that you want to embed, or there are even PDFs, things like that, that you would like to embed. You can pull that from your Drive. And then finally, there is the embed option. And this would be using embed code to embed something such as a YouTube video or a Google slide, something like that. And I'm actually going to give you a resource at the end of this presentation that is a guide just on how to embed different things. Okay, so really robust there under media, under import, all sorts of things that you can import as you are building your ebook. And I'm going to show you an example of an ebook in just a little while. Camera. Okay, so students on the fly can take pictures of themselves. If they are doing a journal, if they are giving maybe in world languages a story of steps throughout the morning. Maybe they're studying their daily routine in a foreign language. They could take pictures of that. Maybe they are taking pictures of a process in science. All they do is click on camera, and hopefully this will work on top of Screencastify, but they can take a picture right there live. So I'm going to go ahead and take a picture. Once you click on use the picture, it works just like the image insert. Okay, so you'll have the toggle buttons that you can make the image smaller or larger. You can tilt the image, and again, you can order those on top of each other if you want to. Okay. Pen allows them, of course, to do some handwriting, some drawing. You as the teacher, if you're using your XP pen, can do that pretty well. You can change the color if you like. You can change the thickness if you like. You probably saw back there on the main screen that as you select your pen right there in the process, you can change the thickness. Okay. And the other thing I want to show you is you have different options as far as the brush stroke, whether you want it to look more like a paint brush, a crayon type of a marking there, or a highlighter. And this is a really neat thing for students. You can do auto draw. So if you are not the best artist, let's say that I want an image of a cat. I'm going to go ahead and start my best attempt at drawing a cat here. Some little whiskers up, and there I can see up above here are my options, and I really actually like this profile of a cat here, so I can insert that. And again, just like with our images, we can make it bigger, smaller, tilt it, put it wherever we want it on the screen. A really cool option under the pen option is auto draw. There is an eraser that you can use to erase. There is a paint bucket that you could use to fill. Okay, so I'm going to actually really quickly undo that. And I'm going to choose my paint bucket, and I can fill that guy in if I want to. Okay, and there is an emoji little keyboard here, so they could search for different emojis to represent whatever it may be that they are studying, okay? So we will put that in right there. And again, the same options as with the image, okay? All right, a few more things under the plus sign. Text, of course, extremely important as they are typing along. And the more that they type, the smaller the font will be. I'll show you in just a moment how we are going to edit all of this stuff as far as size, as far as alignment, things like that. We'll show you in just a moment, okay? And then finally, record. This is powerful. So students could use this recording to actually record sound. So testing, testing. I'm going to record my sound right now, talking. And once you click on stop recording, you can preview what you recorded right here. And you can either delete it or choose to use the recording. It will immediately embed right there as a recording that will play when students view this book. So a really neat thing, they can narrate. Obviously, this is extremely powerful in world languages. They could, I'm going to record my sound. I'm going to pause that. Narrate a process, a really cool thing there that is a possibility with Book Creator. So I purposely skipped over one thing because now that I showed you the audio, I also wanted to show you that there is a video option as well. I often call Google Slides the Swiss Army knife of the Google Apps for Education suite because there's so many options, and I think Book Creator is very comparable, okay? And this is one of the reasons why right here. You can easily embed audio. It's not as easy in Google Slides as it is in Book Creator. That tool is built right into it. But the other option is underneath the camera. Now, before, I just took a still shot, but I didn't highlight this right here. You can actually record video on the fly. Not sure how this is going to look with Screencastify already in play, but you simply click on record video. It counts down, and now I am live recording myself, okay? When I stop the video, again, kind of like the audio, it gives you that preview where you can play it. You can make it full screen. You could download it if you want to, if you were a student. But if you choose to use the video, okay, again, it takes it a minute to upload, and then it inserts it right there into your ebook. So students, again, could narrate, they could talk about a process, they could reflect on their learning, and it's all right there within this one powerful tool. Okay, so I've inserted images, I've inserted text, I've inserted handwriting, audio, video. So now I'm going to talk about, okay, well, how do I add different options? Like maybe I want this to be a different color, or I want this to be a different font, or I want it to be centered. That's all in the inspector. So you choose an item, for example, your text that you've inserted, and you go to the inspector and you will see all the options. I can make this text bigger, smaller. I can center it. I can change the font to a different type of font if I like. I can change the color of my text. I can make it bold. I can put it in italics if I like. So lots of different options here. I could give it a shadow to make it pop out. So that is where after you have inserted the different items with the plus sign, then you go to the inspector for any other possible options. So for example, let's look at this. Okay, so not a ton of options here, but I could do a hyperlink if I wanted to, or I can, again, can move these images from back to front. With our audio under the inspector, I could add a transcript to the audio to make it accessible for everyone. Kind of a cool idea. I can make it invisible when reading, and again, I can move that to back and front. With my handwriting, under the inspector, again, I could give that a hyperlink if I wanted to. So different options under the inspector. The biggest connection with the inspector, I think, is text. That is where you're going to find all your different options for enlarging it, centering it in a certain way, changing the color, all that good stuff when we're talking about text, okay? All right. almost done with the basics of Book Creator now. This is kind of a dinky little book that I've created here. It's really just one page. So let's just add a few more pages here. Okay. The last thing that I have not shown you is actually under the inspector, if I'm on a blank page, okay, I can change the background. So I could have it have a fun design. I could, under the inspector, have graph paper. So maybe for my math people or my science people, if you are plotting some sort of a line here, you could have some really interesting line paper. Really anything. Lots of different options here. Comics. There are paper options for my music people. There are different borders that you could use for your book throughout. Okay, so really cool options here as you're creating your book, and your students are all kinds of papers, borders to make it different. Okay. And again, that's when I create a new page in my book and I go to the inspector option. Okay. All right. So last thing that I want to show you are these options. We've talked about these three, the add a item inspector, the play book or read book is what I first mentioned. As you are editing this book, if you want to flip through it as if you are reading it, you can do that at any point in time. But let's say that I want to move some of these pages around either as a student or as a teacher. Okay, that's under this pages option. I'm going back over to the left here. On the pages option, you can see kind of in a preview mode all the different pages that you have added. You can drag and drop these around in a different order if you would like. And with each page, there are 3 dots there. Of course, we know from Google, 3 dots always means many more options here. You could copy this page. So let's say that I want this duplicated. You can do that very easily by selecting copy. Copy to means that you would add it to a different book or a different library. If you wanted to, you could copy a specific page to another library. Move would mean that you are moving it to a certain page number. So for example, if I'm on number 11, but I wanted to make it and move it to number 5, then I can move that. You can insert, and by that, it means that you're inserting a new page right there live. And then finally, you could delete a page. If you actually don't need that page at all, you can delete it. So again, this is under the pages option. Last thing under preview, where you're reading the book, let's say that you have created this book and you are ready to either share it or publish it. You certainly can click on the share settings here. Remember, I already published this one online, but this is where, as a student, you would publish it and share that URL with your teacher. Remember that these students are all in your library. My library was called Media Center, so they do not have to share it with you. You will see this book in your library from the moment it is created until it is finished in real time. Kind of like when students share a Google Doc with you, it's the same premise. You will be able to see every edit that they make along the way. They could download it as an ebook. That's a little complicated on a Chromebook. It makes a lot more sense if they were working on this on an iPad. They could actually add it to their Apple library, their book library as an ebook to take a look at later. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense for Chromebooks. And then finally, you can actually print this. It converts it into a PDF. Of course, once it's in a PDF, you're not going to have all these interactive hyperlinks such as clicking on this video and being able to play it, etc. But it is a way to save this ebook other than as a URL. Remember, you still have your settings here. As a student, you can decide whether or not you want it to have side-by-side pages. You could highlight certain words, play multimedia. Of course, we want that turned on for audio and video. You can set it to turn the pages automatically, and you can set a certain speed if you would like to. Also, it can be read to you, which is kind of a neat option for accessibility right there. Okay, So now I'm going back to my edit page and back to my books, and you can see those 3 different books there. I've gone through all of the options that students and teachers use as they are building an ebook. Of course, the creativity is only limited by your brain and your students' brains. So a really neat tool with all the bells and whistles. And now we're going to move on to the next topic. Okay, I lied. We're actually going to stay on this topic for one more second because I forgot one last very important thing. And that is, as you're inserting media, you can insert hyperlinks. So for example, let's say that your student has done a report to go along with this ebook and the report is in Google Slides. You can see that other than making the text bold, putting it in italics or underlining, there's also this hyperlink right here. So I'm going to go over here to these slides as a student, and I'm going to grab this share link right here. I'm going to copy that URL, come back into my book creator book, and I'm going to choose this add link. Okay, I'm going to paste my URL right there, click on save and done. And now you can see as they have this text right here, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we can see it. Okay, that now there is actually a hyperlink in with their text. So you can imagine how powerful that one little button is. Just like in Google Slides and really any of the Google tools, and Book Creator is outside of the Google realm, but I feel like it's very comparable to a lot of the tools that are available in Google. That once it's in that play mode, they can hyperlink any part of their text that will take you out to whatever it is that they may have shared with you. So a neat thing there. The final thing before we move on to the last section is that I never copied or covered rather, excuse me, what happens when you choose comic. Okay, so now I'm going to create one more new book. And I'm actually going to choose from this bottom rung of offerings here, whether it's portrait, square, or landscape. I'm again going to go with square. And you will see what happens here is when I go to the add an item menu, I now actually have 3 different options instead of just media, which we went over before with inserting pictures and handwriting and text or audio recording, instead of just shapes right here that again we saw before, okay, which were great options that we had to choose from. We now see that there is an entire new comics menu. Okay, so what does it mean by the comics menu? Well, think about any form of storytelling. Our students love manga books. They can create their own comics in any content area, whether they're describing a process, they're retelling a story, they are giving their own, in their own words, a summary of a moment in history. They can add panels. They can add speech bubbles along the way. They can add thought bubbles. They can add text that is already in kind of that comic format. Okay. And finally, they can add stickers. Okay. So a really neat thing if they are creating comics, and I'm going to show you some examples in just a few moments of what a finished product looks like when we're talking about this, okay? But the only way that they can get this comics panel again is when they are creating a new book, okay? If they choose one of these bottom comic versions, okay? If you don't even want them to have those options, have them select from the top 3 options. But if you would like them to have that whole other menu, they need to select one of the comic options down below. Okay. Okay, so second to last section, we've got 2 more sections to go. I am going to give you a quick little hack in how to turn teacher presentations into ebooks. So maybe you have kind of an outdated PowerPoint presentation And again, remember that I encouraged you to start by using Book Creator as a teaching tool and then move kind of up, if you're thinking about that Bloom's taxonomy, into starting to make it more student driven, put it in their hands so that they're using it as a tool for analyzing, creating, presenting, evaluating the content that they are learning. Okay, so I'm going to exit out of my slides here really quickly just to remind you that you've seen Book Creator before. You probably remember this if you were with us at Eastside back in March. We had this tools and tips for online learning that we created to kind of help teachers that were going home and we're going to be doing e-learning with not only the basics, but also some different tools to use along the way. Okay. So this was Book Creator kind of in action, and I used it as a tool to give you videos, tutorials. These are embedded YouTube videos using embed code, different hyperlinks, things like that to help when we were on e-learning. So let's talk now about, okay, well, how can I use Book Creator as a teaching tool? Okay, so I have pulled up this PowerPoint presentation. And of course, we all know that we can take any Google slide. So let's say, for example, that you have a Google slide instead of a PowerPoint creation. I'll show you both how to take really either one and easily make it into an ebook with Book Creator. Okay, so any Google slide, we know that we can take a Google slide and go to File and then Download and then choose Microsoft PowerPoint. Okay, so once you do that, it will download your Microsoft PowerPoint here locally to your computer. Okay, and it will convert this Google slide into a PowerPoint. Okay, the formatting is not always perfect, but the reason why I'm actually having you kind of go back, you may be thinking, wait a minute, I thought we were all done with PowerPoint. There is a powerful option that's built into PowerPoint that is not available in Google Slides. So if you're trying to convert a Google slide into an ebook in Book Creator, I would actually suggest that you go to File, Download, and download it as a PowerPoint. Okay, that's that first option right there. And I actually have an example here of a PowerPoint that I use for telling time in Spanish. It is technically 13 slides long because this was some practice we did together on the board at the end. Okay, so what I want to do, because in Book Creator, really the only thing you can't insert PDFs, you can't insert an entire PowerPoint. You could do a link if you wanted to, but I actually want to make this into an ebook. So what I'm going to do is change it into pictures, to images, each slide into an image. And the way you do that in PowerPoint is you simply go to File and then you go to Export. And you are going to select that we want to export this as we're going to change the file type, okay? And we're going to export this file type as JPEGs file. That's an image file, okay? And once I click on that, it's going to ask me to save it in a certain spot, okay? So okay, I'm sorry, forgive me. I'm going to start from the beginning again. So I've got my PowerPoint, I'm going to File, Export, change file type, and I want to change it. It could be a PNG, that's another type of image file. I just, for some reason, always go for JPEG, okay? And once I've selected that, I'm going to do Save As. We're used to this. I'm actually just going to save it to my desktop for ease of location. And I'm going to keep the title the same. And once I click on Save, it's going to ask me if I want to export all slides or just this one slide. I want all the slides, so I'm going to do that. Okay. It's going to think for just a moment, and it's going to tell me that each slide in my presentation has been saved as a separate file, a separate image in the folder. Okay. Now, notice that with a PowerPoint or with Google Slides, we have kind of this horizontal, kind of the landscape look, if you will. Okay. So it makes sense that when I'm in Book Creator and I'm creating this new book, that I choose this landscape version. Okay. Now, remember, if I go to Desktop, and I'm going to click on my folders here, okay, and I go to my desktop, I will see that now there is this folder called Telling Time in Spanish. And if I click on it, notice there are the slides that we saw before, and they're all images, okay? So now all that I have to do is go in and I'm going to add an image for each one. I'm going to import from my files. And I'm going to import each of my slides. And you will notice that it fits just perfectly on that page. Of course, if you wanted to, you could add a title page. And remember, you go to pages to rearrange those, okay? So you could certainly add a cover page if you wanted to. And now I'm ready to keep building. I'm going to add, import from files, slide 2. Adding a new page with the plus sign here. I'm going to add, import from files, slide 3. Okay, so in the interest of time, I have now added those in. I paused it real quick, and I can go to play so I can read this book and kind of preview what it looks like, okay? So here we are, and I have got the same notes that I used to have as a PowerPoint presentation. Now, why would I do this? Why would I want to convert this to an ebook? Well, lots of reasons. I can go in now and I could add videos of myself and embed those here. I can add a video on the fly under camera and record a video of myself explaining the content that's on that particular page in the book. Okay, so I'm going to stop this video and use it. And I can actually insert a video on the fly right here of myself explaining this entire page. Maybe you don't want a video, you just want audio. You can do that with the record option. I could embed a hyperlink here. So as they're flipping the pages of this book, I can be giving instructions. You can also use it as a way to build. So remember, again, you can go through and you can share this book with your students when you publish it online. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and call it Telling Time and publish it. And what's neat about this is once they have that link to the book, you can continue to add to it. So maybe day 1, they only have access to these notes right here, okay? But you could go back as the teacher, okay? And for day 2, now you're going to add some pages, okay? Okay. So here's your day 2 content. Maybe it's some practice that you want them to copy down on their own paper or submit via Google Doc. You can see that once here, when I go back and refresh that tab, I can click through as the student, and now there is a new page that's been added. You can add page numbers to your different pages very easily by inserting text. So therefore, you could guide students. It'd be a very organized way to guide them to what different pages that they should be on for that day. Of course, Google Slides does a very similar service for you. when you are getting out content to students. But again, what I think is powerful about Book Creator is that you can insert audio, you can insert video very, very easily without Screencastify, without using Loom. You can insert audio without having to use a different tool, and it's right there in your fingertips. Images, text, handwriting, all there. And only took me a minute or so to download that PowerPoint as JPEGs, insert those files, and now I'm ready to go and share this Book Creator book with my students as a way to deliver content. So that was my hack for, again, turning a teacher presentation into an ebook. And now we're ready for the last part of our presentation here, which again is ideas for implementation. So as we talk about ideas for implementation, I just want to show you a sample ebook here as a final project or product, and re-emphasize some of the things we learned today. So don't forget that this powerful tool allows you or your students to insert things like text, shapes, images, grids, video right on the fly. You can record it right there. Comics, you can insert video that's already saved into your drive, so students don't have to do it on the fly. Audio, so students can narrate a story, narrate a process, and hyperlinks. So this page, all created with Book Creator using emojis, using text, etc. Okay. Reminder again, two of the most powerful things, you can easily insert a video right there on
Students
the
can
fly.
record videos to demonstrate their learning.
You can insert audio that looks like this little icon. You can make it large, big. You can put it at the bottom of the page anywhere you want to, but students can narrate using audio. So let's talk about some ideas for integration. For my English language arts people, graphic novel version. So you're reading Night, you're reading The Scarlet Letter, you are reading To Kill a Mockingbird. Students could create a graphic novel version of a chapter, of a character analysis, using that comics option. Sequencing, summary, a great way using pages of an ebook to create that as a student. Of course, research. This is a great way to present their research. They can voice what they have learned using audio or video. They can embed links. They can include photos and descriptions. And finally, compare and contrast. Maybe they're arguing two different sides of something that they have studied, a pro, con, a great way to compare and contrast. For my math people, this could be a portfolio of problems, and they could work out using the handwriting option, a solution, and maybe in different colors. They could have the actual problem inserted as an image. They could use the handwriting tool to give the solution in a contrasting color, and then they could insert some audio to explain how they solve that problem. Of course, there is math vocabulary, video reflection, or demonstration of creating or solving a problem. Okay. For my science people, of course, a lab report. This is a great tool for that. Any type of sequencing or a process. This is a great way to describe that. Project presentation at the end, kind of like a culmination. So if we're talking about project-based learning, this could be what we're using along the way to journal our findings, our research, and whatever it is that we are trying to solve. And of course, kind of a basic thing, but safety instruction. For my social studies people, for your data-based questions, you can present evidence, support for those. Any type of timeline, each page could be a different era or a different decade that they are presenting. Obviously, they can embed primary sources. If you have images of different primary sources that they can analyze and showcase to show or summarize a certain period in time. biographical information, again, research, and comparing and contrasting. 4, college and career readiness. So this could be for college applications, a portfolio of work experience, maybe volunteering experience. And finally, general classroom ideas, any instructions for a process, any procedure. This obviously for any project that you can think of could be a final product that they present. It's great for accessibility because you can do narrations. It can be read to a student if needed. It would be a great way to communicate with a student on homebound. And obviously, this could be used for subplans, but that is the most basic idea. Think about all of the creative things that your students and you could do with Book Creator. So even more resources, and this actual ebook right here of Book Creator Ideas, I'm going to share this link with you. It will be found in the PD library, as well as if you go to the PD calendar and click on December, it will be there as well in that Google Doc that Ms. Brooks shared with you. So you can find it again in the PD library under the December date or in the PD calendar under December. But each of these goes to even more resources for implementation by these content areas. And boy, when I say it gives you in-depth ideas, for example, I'm just going to click on math, all sorts of things, and all of them are actually delivered via Book Creator books themselves. So they give you formatting ideas. They give you templates that you could possibly use. Obviously, some of these are going to be for elementary and some are going to be more appropriate for high school, but it does provide you with a wealth of ideas for all of these different content areas. Okay. So here we have some foreign language learners. And again, this can be ESOL, French, or Spanish. And as you drill down, you'll see lots of examples that have been created by teachers as well as students. Okay. All right. And then finally, the last thing I want to talk about as I'm wrapping this up is as a teacher, when you do go to that little hamburger menu to your teacher dashboard, there are 2 different areas. There's Discover. Okay, and the Discover landing page again gives you all sorts of examples by grade level, so you can drill down to high school, books based on formative assessment, digital citizenship, examples by subject area again, lots of ideas for project-based learning. And as we are talking about moving into the block schedule, one thing I really want to emphasize under the Discover page and also under the Learn page, and it caught my eye earlier today, is creating journals with Book Creator. A journal can be used in any content area, from special education to English to science to social studies. So this could be more of a journal or a digital portfolio. So if we're thinking about students keeping up with their learning throughout the year, documenting, reflecting, collecting it in one place. This is an entire book. And again, just want to tell you, it's under the hamburger menu. I'm going to go back right here. Under the teacher dashboard, under the Discover section, this is right here for right now, on creating journals with Book Creator. And this is an entire ebook by Monica Burns. If you've ever heard her before, she's been at Upstate Technology Conference a couple years in a row now in Greenville County Schools, that talks about all sorts of different types of journalism. Or journaling rather, excuse me. So a great thing when we're talking about block scheduling, students could be creating a journal that is in your library. You can see it as they create it throughout the year. as they add content and they document their learning. It could be, again, more of a portfolio. It could be more of a writing journal. That would be up to your content area, but something to consider as we're moving into next year, and you're thinking about possibly spending the $60 per year. I know that I'm not going to spend that much money out of my 275 unless I'm really going to use the tool every day. Well, this is a great way to have the students add to their book creator book every single day, or once a week. They are adding to this journal. This could be part of that chunk of time, that 90-minute chunk of time that they're adding to their journal a couple of days a week. It could be a major assessment that you're doing throughout the year, as they're adding ideas. But this is a great ebook that Monica Burns has created, not only because it gives great ideas for different types of journaling or digital portfolios that could be created, but it also gives really great template ideas. Look at some of the audio that she's added, the text that she's added, the images that she has added along the way to give you ideas about creating journals with your students. So I hope that that is a great resource. And again, just going to remind you one more time that that is under that Discover section on your teacher dashboard. Okay, so time to wrap things up. Hopefully you've learned a good deal about Book Creator today, something to seriously consider, dipping your toes in when you have time, using it first as maybe a content delivery tool, and then moving into using it as a student-driven project creation tool. There is the free version with 40 books. As I mentioned before, there is a button with your library where you can archive the library. So let's say that you have used up all 40 books and you're ready to move on to a new project. You don't need to save those books. You can archive it. They don't delete, they're still there, but that just frees up your 40 book allotment to use for a new project. So it is doable with the free version. I do think that the $60 version is a pretty good deal if that's something that you are interested in as we move into next year and into the block schedule. So to wrap up, a little bit of humor here for you. I told you that you could create comics. Again, remember that this is the ebook that has the resources embedded into it for the different content areas. And this will be provided to you in the SOP underneath the professional development tab in PD Library, as well as the PD calendar. And here to wrap up for the day is my comic strip for the day that I created dedicated to Eastside High School. Let you read that there. Sorry, Mayholtz, I had to do it. But a really cool creation tool, and I'm telling you guys that your students are going to run with it. If you would like to collaborate and use this tool coming up in a unit, maybe you would like myself or Miss Brooks to help you by presenting how to use Book Creator with your students, and then you yourself present the content, and we work collaboratively together to present and use Book Creator as part of a unit, please let us know. Email us. Go to the SOP, to technology coaching, or to instructional coaching, and connect with us. And we would love, love, love to do that. Any questions, please let us know. Don't forget to fill out the Google form to get credit for today. And thank you so much for your time and attention.